Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Godson, co-CEO with Momentum Events. It's my pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon for today's webinar. Before I go ahead and introduce our presenter for today, a couple of notes. Firstly, this session is being recorded. Both the audio and the slides are going to be recorded, and everybody that is registered for the webinar will receive an email from us within 24 hours that will explain how to access the recording. In addition, Neustar are making the slides, a PDF copy of the slides, available to all attendees. And again, information on that will be included in the post-webinar email that you'll receive within 24 hours or so. Another little piece of housekeeping, we will be doing a Q&A at the conclusion of this session. Please do feel free to use the question panel, which you'll find to the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToMeeting pane or GoToWebinar pane. That's the place where you can pose questions to today's presenter. With that being said, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ken Inman, who is the VP of Data Science Analytics with Neustar for today's webinar entitled Taking Customer Service. Oh, you changed the screen. Taking Customer Service from Talk to Action. So, Ken, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much for the intro, Matt. I'm sorry I jumped the gun on the picture. I just figured people would want to see me, I guess.
No problem.
At any rate, I definitely appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to attend the webinar. And just to give you a quick intro before we get started on the actual session, I just want to make sure that people have some sense of what Neustar is all about. Neustar is an information services company, and we're delivering consumer insights and intelligence to really fuel marketing strategy and tactics, and this is like into the CMO, CIO organizations. We serve a broad range of industries, including retail, ad tech, finance, auto, CPG, telecom, just to name a few. What we're really all about is transforming data, big, small, medium, or otherwise, into understanding and intelligence, so that the clients, the folks that we support, can take actionable insights. We do this through a wide variety of cloud-based real-time platforms, as well as analytic solutions. So the talk today, like the title says, it's going beyond just customer lifetime value, or how you take customer centricity and really put it into action. So it's all about leveraging the investment that you've made in customer centricity. And the key takeaway, or the key point is it's not just identifying high and low value customers that matters. That's core to customer centricity. But what you really need to do is put that in action, and that's not easy. And so that's what today's discussion is going to be about. We're going to talk about what's needed in terms of kind of an overall or a complete view or stack of solutions and applications to actually execute on the full vision of customer centricity. To set the stage, if you have listened to Professor Fader or attended any of the sessions on customer centricity, there are kind of four key tenets that come up a lot in these discussions. And it's all about the central idea is to focus on engaging your high-value customers with tailored communications and service. In a lot of those sessions, I really love to listen to Professor Fader. He's a great presenter and speaker, very personal, but he always drills home on one message, and that's CLV, customer lifetime value. And his kind of tagline is accept no substitute. That's the only way to really start your journey on customer centricity. And obviously agree with that wholeheartedly. It's core to the concept, but there is more to life than CLV. And that's, the fourth tenet really here is all about that. It's where many marketers actually get stuck. While you may be able to get to CLV, you get stuck here. And how do I know that they're getting stuck here? Well, 40% of marketers, in studies admit that they don't know how to engage their high-value customers. And being a numbers kind of person, of course, that means that the majority do. So 60% actually do. But then the question is, well, do customers actually agree with that statement? So you got marketers, and now you can look at customers and see whether or not they agree. And if you look at the numbers and information and feedback from customers, you'll see that only 7% are giving marketers an A. And actually 9% give them an F. So there's a range in there. But, you know, clearly in all of this, something is missing, because it's also true that 80% of customers simply don't believe that brands understand them. And so if we take a step back and we look at this, clearly there's something in the way. There's something missing. And that something is related back to data, typically. There are several things related to data that I'll talk about here, just to kind of outline some of the issues. And the first one, if you've been on this customer-centric journey, you've experienced it, and it's organizational silos. If you look within companies, it's typically the case that all the data needed to drive these kinds of solutions and scenarios is not located in one place. There isn't one centralized repository. The data will exist in the marketing department that they're using to drive marketing, messaging, prospecting, and such. There's also going to be a CRM file someplace where they're collecting information on the services that existing customers are actually purchasing, leveraging, licensing from an organization, and that exists in one place. There can be transactional databases where they're tracking activity. There can be a billing database. There can be a support database. There can be various other places where the information that's needed is located. And these barriers are hard to overcome. They can exist in different departments, be controlled by different entities. And so organizational silos simply are a huge roadblock in the way of traveling down this journey. You know, and this isn't because companies don't think it's important to bring down the silos. They're just hard to bring down. I mean, the vast majority of companies clearly see the value in doing customer-centric marketing and trying to engage directly with their customers. So they believe and they know it's useful, but again, this shortcoming is apparent. Only 24% of companies say that they have a single view of the customer today, say that they have that information that they need to be able to drive that personalization. And not only that, but when you run into these silos, you need to find some solution for the problem. And so, you know, typically what happens is companies will make a left turn or go the wrong direction because they can't get the data together that they need. They start to rely on syndicated data sources, market studies, trending. They're using data that is really not central to their business to make these decisions. And so at this point, you know, you're kind of not surprised to see that so many marketers are getting an F from consumers on understanding them. But in this case, I want to talk about where we're at. And so the intent here is to kind of say, where do you go once you've solved some of these problems? So if you've been able to calculate lifetime value, if you've been able to put into play CLV, then that means that you actually have been able to get access to that internal data you need to make those CLV calculations. You've unlocked those organizational silos. You're not using only external data. You can't calculate CLV on external data. You have to have access to that internal data. So, you know, okay, great, table stakes, you're in the game, but okay, now we need to take it to the next level. You know, based on this, we can probably say you're at least not getting an F. The question is, how do you get an A? And that's what I want to talk about through the rest of the presentation here. And so this goes back to the question of how you're using that data. so you can classify somebody as being high value based on customer lifetime value. That's not the end game here. The end game now is to personalize a message to those folks that are falling in that high value category or bucket. So that means for high value customers, you need to know things like, are they retired? Are they a family that's just starting out? They're younger and just had their first children or their first child. Are they people who shop at Target? Do they shop at Nordstrom's? What websites do they visit? Do they go to WebMD? Do they use Amazon online to do purchasing? What TV shows do they watch? What are their preferences for media consumption? So these are things that CLV doesn't tell you anything about, but they're things that you need to know if you're going to tailor or personalize your communications. You need to know these things across all channels so that you can communicate consistently, whether you're seeing somebody online or offline, whether you're connecting with them via email or a direct marketing campaign. And you also need to be able to take this information and use it to track, measure, and optimize. It's not just pushing out messaging, but it's figuring out whether or not that messaging is actually resonating and kind of what the return you're getting. So it's not just CLV. It's definitely much more than that. And, in terms of if you're like most marketers, many marketers kind of understand this, but they're still failing. I mean, if you go back and you remember, 40% of marketers admit to failing, and 83% say they're struggling. And why is that? Well, it's complicated. You may be able to personalize messages in a few channels. You can track your direct marketing campaigns, and you can personalize in a DM campaign, but you can't do it online in a digital campaign. On the digital side, it could be that folks would come to your website and authenticate. You can then track because they've authenticated or logged in, but what about all the prospects that come to your website that don't authenticate? So you're only getting part of the picture when you're collecting this data. So clearly there are barriers, and because there are barriers to customer centricity, you need to bring in some of these other data sources. You need to not just rely actually on your internal data, which is what you use for CLV. You need to actually complete the picture beyond just your CRM database. And you need to bring in some behavioral aspects. Now, you can get this, again, from your internal data, but these behavioral aspects, if you're just looking at your own brand data, don't give you this full picture. So again, you don't have the complete picture of your customers until you can fill out the rest of this circle to know what people are doing outside your four walls. For example, you can think about people that are coming to your website. If you happen to sell Ferraris, just because they come to your website doesn't necessarily mean that they're capable of buying that kind of a car. And so that requires outside data from just your internal CRM database to complete out that picture. And in this kind of a world, you're not alone. It's only about 15% of marketers that really it's only about 15% of marketers that are taking that extra step of using data to actually personalize these interactions. And if you think back to one of the earlier stats, I mean, customers know this. It's the 80% of customers really know and kind of see or believe that brands don't understand them. And then the other issue that comes up is it's not just completing the picture on these high-value customers. That's important, but it's also linking to resolve some of these linkages. All the data in the world is meaningless if you can't use it within the modern marketing ecosystem. You have to have a methodology to resolve the many identifiers that are used and all the technologies that are being seen across the channel. If you look out there today, it's an ecosystem where people are using multiple devices. And in order to reach your target audience with marketing communications, you've got to accurately identify them consistently across a fast-growing array of potential touch points. These touch points are kind of classed in two ways. You can talk about interactions where you actually know something, some kind of identifier, piece of information about folks, and then there are unknown touch points. People are using, on average, about 6.7 devices to connect, and what you need to be able to do is link that person across those devices. You don't want to message differently based on the device that they're coming to you through. As a high-value customer, you should know that regardless of the device. When we talk about known interactions, these are things like you're doing an email campaign, so you would know the email. Somebody is coming into your call center, so you have a phone number. Unknown interactions would be folks that are coming in to your website where they're not announced, or if you think about a big space that's out there in TV, you really don't know much about who's viewing your ads or who potentially would be in an audience when you're out there serving. And, not only that, but sometimes people have multiple email addresses. They can have wireless phone numbers, landline phone numbers. They can have multiple devices in their household, multiple iPads or tablet devices, as well as computers. And it's being able to tie all of these things together that really is going to be key to deriving a consistent messaging strategy and bringing home customer centricity. So it's simply not easy to take this next step. And so, talking about customer centricity, frame the issue, frame some of the problems, and kind of where we're at in the current state, assuming that you've been able to calculate CLV, classify your high value and your low value customers. So where does that leave us? Well, go back and identify these things. We need to start removing some of these barriers. We need to, see how we can bring in data outside and not just rely on brand-only interactions to build out this complete view of your customers. And we need to be able to resolve these multiple interactions and touch points in a consistent way is what it's going to take to drive us to a true customer understanding, an integrated view from internal and external data so that we can get the 360-degree view of our customers. And that's going to lead us to, basically a single lens that you can use to view and craft the messages that you need to drive really customized and tailored customer-centric messaging out to your customers and fully leverage the value out of the investment you've made in customer centricity. So what does this look like? Well, we had this picture, the 360-degree view, and when we talk about this, it is having sources that you can use to build out this picture. It's getting data sources that tell you about the demographics here of your customers as well as prospects. It's purchasing behaviors. Where do they shop? What kinds of products and services are they buying? Lifestyles, are they active? What kind of vacations do they take? What are their preferences for dining? and media consumption. What radio stations do they listen to? What print media, digital media are they consuming? You need all of this information to build out the complete picture so you can truly deliver on customer centricity and customer centric messaging and personalization. And this is not just true for one customer. Again, if you've listened to Peter Fader and some of his discussions around this, he really makes the point that customer centricity means that customers are not created equal. There are some that are extremely high value and you want to treat them as such, and there are some that are not as high value and you want to appropriately treat that population or constituency as well. You don't ignore your low value or your non-high converting customers, but you definitely need to pay attention to them. And so it's having not just one view of customers that's built out in a 360-degree sense. It's having multiple views of high value customers and customers that aren't as high value. Because you can't provide differentiated messaging or marketing unless you've built out the complete persona for all of these core groups that you need to market to. And behind this 360-degree view, there are a couple of things that you really need to focus in on. And the first is talking about what we like to call propensity and potential. So, for high-value customers, clearly you need to understand the propensity for your products and the value behind that. I mean, you can be classed as a high-value customer, but could be a mix of services that you're purchasing or that you're leveraging, and you need to understand for those high-value customers, what's that propensity and potential look like for your company, and not only high value, of course, but also for those that aren't in that high value category, and within that propensity to build out the 360-degree profile, you need to also bring in the understanding of the preferences, so you can really drive home that specific marketing message to those folks. To highlight this a little bit and make it maybe a little bit more concrete, can talk through a quick example here of putting these 4 Ps into practice for a customer. So in this case, we're talking about potentially a bank, and they want to understand visitors to their website. And if you're looking at website traffic, of course, there are folks that authenticate and folks that don't, people that you would know something about, but there's also a lot of people who would show up at your website and either they aren't current customers and so they don't log in, or they're just shopping for services potentially, and so they're just anonymous to you. So to understand and take a customer-centric approach to managing that, you need to collect some data, and you need to try to figure out how to understand who, especially the unauthenticated folks, are, so you can market to them. Since I'm a statistician, come from a very empirical and analytic background, we all are. If you're into customer centricity, step one in doing anything like this always goes back to collect data. Obviously, you need to collect data, and in this sense, that means setting up something on the website so you can listen, so you can start to capture information as people are hitting on the website. And then what are you going to do with the information that you capture? Well, you're going to analyze and evaluate to validate and figure out the opportunity here. In this case, you need to be able to take and look at all the traffic to the website. You can parse it out by whether they authenticated, logged in which case you've got one set of information that you would know about them. The other folks that don't log in, you need to go and try to figure out through linkages how you can attach data so that you can provide additional customer intelligence. And if you've got good linkages, good sources to do that, you can actually find that there are a lot of ways to try to bring additional intelligence to that unauthenticated traffic. And in this case, about 70% of the unauthenticated traffic we're able to kind of match and bring some information to bear. And so then the next question is, for those folks, can you start to take a customer-centric approach? Can you start to differentiate these folks and assign them to high, low-value groupings? And once you've done that, then you can start to build out and apply the 4 Ps: propensities, and profile. So once you've started to associate data with the unauthenticated traffic, you can then go and start to understand those folks from the standpoint of a customer centricity approach, and how many of those unauthenticated visitors to your site happen to fall into the category of being high value or low value, or somewhere in between, so that you can appropriately personalize the messaging and start to segment or group these folks along the various dimensions. Propensity meaning high value customers, the products and services that they're likely to purchase from you, and the levels at which they're doing that. And that leads into then the next stage, which is deriving actionable insights. So the marketing and the messaging part, and this comes out of being able to profile. So once you've associated data, grouped folks into your high value, low value, associated CLV, customer lifetime value with them, you can then start to bring in, if you've built out this 360-degree view, a profile of who they are and how to reach them. And this can live at several levels. You can bring in the preferences like we talked about, brand preferences, media preferences. You could also bring in information about price sensitivity. You can even go in and look at markets and start to categorize and group various markets for potential value in terms of the locations where your customers tend to come from, and the types of neighborhoods that they tend to live in. So again, it's kind of putting the 4 Ps into play based on the information you've collected about that 360-degree view of your customers, is what's going to lead you down to actually leveraging the investment you made in customer centricity, and in coming up with the calculations that you need to determine whether people are high value, low value, and taking that and using it then to drive interactions on in this case on a website. The interactions can also be applied out of the website, but in this case we're kind of looking at specifically directly driving traffic on your website. And so, the other thing is not just in a specific case or example such as on your website, but turning all this information, this 360-degree view, into a broader base information that you can drive out and you can actually take action on. And this goes back to what we were talking about in terms of there's not just one way your customers are going to interact with you. They're not just going to come to your website. They'll come to your website. They'll come in if you're a bank. They could be coming into your branches. They could be phoning into your call center. They could be interacting with your ATMs. There are any number of ways, obviously, that your customers can interact with you. And so segmenting consistently, classifying into high value, low value is key. Targeting them accurately, and then measuring for success are kind of all of the things that you need to be able to do. And so to take action on all this data and follow through on all of these things, again, we go back to the known interactions and unknown interactions, and just ensuring that you've got the linkages so that, if you're looking at a specific individual and they come to your website, you treat them in the same way as if that same individual called into your call center, or the same way as if you pushed out an email marketing campaign to that individual. You don't want solutions that are channel specific, where you're pushing out your website messages based on the last website somebody was on, but then when they're calling into your call center, you're doing a lookup based off of a phone number and getting a completely different set of information to put that person in context. Now you're serving up two different messages, and you get the situation where you're serving up two different offers. It can be very confusing to the customers, and again, I go back to that point. It's no wonder that 80% of customers feel like brands don't understand them. If you're delivering up inconsistent messages across channels, then it's obvious that customers don't feel like you're listening, and that you're speaking to their needs. And when you can link all this data together, it goes back to the complexity of the ecosystem out there, and now we can start turning not just having customer data, but turning this data into customer understanding. And if we can link it together, then we can use it to prioritize messaging and actually tailor the experience back to specific customers based on the attributes and the value that they have for our company or organization. And not only that, but we also want to have ways that we can go in and measure, validate, and verify. It's not just personalizing the message and pushing that out there, but you also have to have a way to verify and validate that those messages are resonating. You have to have a way to go out and look and see whether or not those messages are leading to conversion. So, when you talk about personalization, the question is it working? And so you need to be able to tie exposures, for example, to conversion. And you need to be able to do that, again, across all the channels that you can use to reach folks. You need to be able to tie TV ads and spots back to digital conversion. You need to understand whether or not your email marketing campaigns are actually driving traffic to your call center and people are converting in the call center. You need to tie digital advertising back to purchases in brick and mortar. It's, again, a very complex ecosystem that we operate in today. It's not just one channel. Looking at a digital channel where you can see who is on a website and then converted on a website, that's not a true view of measurement or attribution. What you need to also understand is in that website conversion, was there part of that that was driven by TV spots, or part of that was driven by direct mail campaigns or email campaigns? So you need to be able to, again, link at an individual level these potential consumers, existing consumers or prospects, and understand their marketing journey. How did they get to you as a conversion? And so that, again, requires the linkages that are actually behind a lot of the 360-degree view sense that we talked about for customers. So those are the things that need to be in place, or that you need to push out and do to go beyond just high value, low value, and CLV calculations, to build out a complete personalization and stack to really leverage the full value of customer centricity. You need to have a way to build out propensities and to build out profiles of your high value customers. And to do that requires linking of data and information, and that linking of identifiers or identities, email addresses, phone numbers, street addresses, social media handles, has to be in place to support the complex ecosystem that we have out there that you need to interact with to actually bring value back to the CLV calculations and the customer-centric approach to build out the complete customer-centric approach. To kind of, again, summarize, you need an authoritative identity methodology. You need to be able to customize it so that it reflects your high-value customers, and it needs to provide actionable insights. And in terms of the way that we look at this through some of the solutions at Neustar that we have to offer, what we focus in on is providing an analytics framework that really does support both the 4 Ps around CLV or customer lifetime value groups, and also provides the underlying linkages that you need. And so in terms of being able to build out that 360-degree view and follow through on the propensities, one of the first things you have to be able to do is tie your internal CRM data and such that you've built your lifetime value, your CLV calculations on, to span and go outside your 4 walls, your internal database. And the analytics framework, the analytics framework that we have to do that at Neustar is called Element 1. And so essentially with Element 1, you can extend out that reach and apply it to a full view of all potential customers in the U.S. And so you can then, once you've done that, start tying information about all your potential customers back to your CLV calculations. And the solution that we have solves a lot of the other problems as well in terms of being able to link to all the other databases and data sources that you need, and do that in real time. So you need a solution that's scalable. It has to have depth in terms of bringing in that 360-degree view, and it has to be reliable. And with Element 1, just a little more information here on the stack solution here that it has. We've tied Element 1 back through an identifier or an identity stack or layer, so that no matter what channel somebody is coming in and approaching you as a customer or a prospect, we can consistently identify who they are, whether they're calling you on a cell phone or their landline, whether they're coming to a website as authenticated or unauthenticated, whether it's based on a street address. We can consistently identify who is behind that interaction or communication, and associate with them a correct lifetime or customer lifetime value by using the analytics framework that we've built out. And then that analytics framework itself is tied back to external data sources. So you can, through Element 1, start to make inferences about media consumption patterns, understand the kinds of households or individuals that are coming to your website in terms of what their shopping behavior is outside of the business that they do with you. If you're that bank, you can figure out that, well, this customer is most likely to shop at Nordstrom's and actually does have the income to support the purchase of that Ferrari. Or this customer is coming in and they're a retiree, and so you want to speak to them in a language that's appropriate for somebody who's a retiree, as opposed to somebody who's just starting out and forming a family. So again, it's linking together all of this information in a consistent way that really is going to be key to being successful at leveraging the investment you've made in customer centricity and your CLV calculations, if you will. And so that's pretty much the presentation. And again, the key points, the key takeaways from all of this is, if you think about customer centricity and the 4 tenets, it's all about personalizing content and recognizing that there isn't just one customer. There are customers, and they aren't created equal. As Professor Fayer says, there are high-value customers, and you want to treat them that way. There are customers that are not high value, and you, again, want to treat them appropriately. You don't ignore anyone, but you treat them in the manner that's appropriate for the business objectives that you have. You need to match value with expense. You need to make sure that not only are you looking at value that they bring to you, but you have to also understand who they are so that you can make sure that you can get that appropriate value. So it's not just about CLV. There is more than that, and it's about making sure you've got the right infrastructure, the right data, and the right processes in place so that you can go beyond just simply CLV. The other key takeaway that I probably assume you can kind of get from looking at the presentation is that Neustar's favorite color is green, as it shows up quite a bit in the presentation. With that, again, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for listening in. And please feel free to contact me. My email address is here, ken.inman@neustar.biz. Shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to follow up with any queries that you make, or put you in contact with appropriate folks here at Neustar. With that, I can kick it back if anybody has any questions. Definitely. We've got some time, about 15 minutes here left in the hour to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Again, this is Matt Godson with Momentum Events. Thank you so much, Ken, for a fabulous presentation. We do have several questions that come in, so I'm going to pose those to you now. The first question is, you talked about having a 360-degree view. How does the questioner get started building that? Where does the data come from, and how long do you think, in your opinion, it would take?
Oh, sure. Great question. And it definitely isn't easy. And, a couple of things come into play when you talk about building that 360-degree view. One of the first ones I definitely spent some time in the presentation addressing is linkages. If you go back and think about your internal database, your CRM database, for example, you typically have a lot of rich information about what somebody is doing with you as a customer. That might mean you've got their phone number. It might mean that you've actually got their street address, you've got their name, you know how much they're spending with you, you know what kinds of products and services they're actually buying, purchasing, or licensing from you. So, you will have access to information about your customers. The problem is you don't have information about what they're doing outside of your four walls, and that's the 360-degree view. So how do you build that? Well, you can take the identifier that you have in that database, say it's an address or say it's a phone number, and you need to be able to use that identity information to link to other data sources is one way to do it. And so you can start to build out a picture of your customers by tying in external or other data sources through that identity matching. So that's one way to do it. But again, that direct identity matching to try to find third-party data isn't always very robust. It's hard to go and link directly information. And so, typically the way that you actually end up doing this is through propensity modeling or analytics. And this kind of goes to what I was talking about at the end of the session here with element one. What you can clearly do is classify your your CRM, folks in your CRM based on high value or your CLV categories. If you've done it by deciles, maybe you've got 10 groups or something like that. So you can classify your customers based on a metric around CLV, customer lifetime value. You can then go and associate that CLV with element 1 or an analytics framework. And then you can take that analytics framework that you've created and overlay that on top of other data sources that aren't linked one-to-one to your internal CRM. And that's typically the way these 360-degree views are built out, is by this analytic layer that links together your CRM database to third-party databases. Element 1 is one approach that you can definitely leverage and use to do that. There are other ways to accomplish the task, but it's an analytics approach to linking external data to your internal sources. Now, the other part of the question was, how long does it take to do it? Maybe that was a long answer, which makes you believe that it takes a long time to do. It can be challenging. It depends on kind of the internal resources that you have to drive that, or whether or not you contract externally. A lot of companies, will contract with other companies to actually build these solutions for them. That way they focus on what they're best at doing, which is selling products and services that are servicing their existing customers, and you go out and leverage other companies that will help you build out your complete stack for customer intelligence. And sometimes that's a quicker path to success because you don't have to build then all of those fundamental components that are required to solve that problem. A lot of big companies, like Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, actually do have, large groups that are working to do this. Even those companies, we work with a lot of them directly because they simply don't have access to all the data and information they need. But the process can take, if you were to come to Neustar and say, help us build this out, we can get you up and running with initial intelligence through what's called a CTA, customer target analysis, within probably about a month or two, and then you go from there to build out more sophisticated solutions or license some of the platforms and such.
Okay, great. The next question we have actually may be kind of a deeper dive, or you may kind of feel like you've adequately covered it. It was regarding how you create those high and low value segments and what methodology or approach you might use in order to do that. I don't know if you have any kind of further kind of ideas about the methodology you might use in order to create those segments.
Sure. So I guess what I was talking about in the first place is kind of getting the data and such all together. There's still actually another, so it's a relevant question, actually, good question, because now it's talking about how do you kind of figure out within high value customers. Every high value customer obviously isn't going to look the same. If you remember back to the 360-degree views, there can be 3 or 4 different personas or profiles for high-value customers. How do you figure out that your high-value group is composed of 3 different personas or groupings, or 4, or that there are 5 distinct flavors of high-value customers in your database? And so you bring all this data and information in, and then you have to have some mechanism to go through and create groupings within your high-value customers that are meaningful. And so this is, in a certain sense, it's segmentation or clustering. So it's kind of taking that data and saying, here's the 3 distinct categories of high-value customers, and what describes those as being 3 distinct groups. One of them, high value, there's a certain product mix with that high value group, and there's a certain set of marketing attributes, right? They're older, they're empty nesters, they tend to live in more rural areas, they tend to go to certain websites. So that's kind of a target group then that you've created, and you can use some clustering routines or some association rules to try to kind of figure that that's a group that exists distinct from another one. But more is a middle-aged audience, high value, middle-aged, slightly different product mix, but you know, they have kids at home that are in high school or getting ready to go to college, and so your messaging is going to be different between those two. So there still actually is an analytics component to this, even after you get the data and bring it into play. And again, you need to have somebody who's kind of savvy or people who are kind of savvy in data analysis to help you kind of tease out those differences. So yeah, relevant question. Thanks.
Okay, and the final question we have today is if you're able to talk about the differences between various kind of vertical sectors or industries. So, you know, comparing, you know, this process for a CPG company versus like a financial services company, for example.
Sure, and then this is actually goes back to customer centricity and some of the topics that I've seen discussed at conferences I've been to. You know, what really differs between like the example CPG and financial. Financial institutions are going to know a lot more about their customers. They're going to know information. They'll probably have your address, a phone number to contact you. You know, if you're going to a website to do online banking, they're going to have probably an email for you. So, you know, banks, financial institutions, entities like that have kind of a better start, if you will, on the ability to have the identifiers that are needed to follow through on the linkages. If you think about consumer packaged goods, CPG, or even purely online, online marketers, people like that, they have difficulties in just simply getting started with some of the identifiers. A lot of times, you know, if you're a company that's you know, like Procter & Gamble, and you've got all these various products that are sold through grocery stores and such, it's really hard for you to get data on who's actually purchasing, the identities of those folks that are actually purchasing. And a lot of those kinds of companies rely on frequent shopper programs. I know that, again, that's a common topic within the customer centricity sessions, is to institute frequent shopper programs, loyalty programs, as a way to start collecting and building up the core underlying identifier data that you need to drive these solutions. So, you know, depending on the industry and your ability to get access to some of the fundamental components of this, it definitely does impact, you know, how hard it is to kind of get these things started. But no matter what industry you're in, what vertical you happen to be, you do have to find ways to overcome those obstacles. You know, and I know that there are various talks and such that Peter Fader's organization has pulled together to help companies resolve those various barriers that they may face to just simply getting started on the customer-centric journey.
Well, thanks so much. You know, Ken, it's a fascinating presentation on a fascinating topic. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. That is pretty much all we have time for today. So before we wrap up, I just want to thank everybody on the call for your attentiveness and your great questions today. And thank you, Ken at Neustar, for the presentation. Ken, I'll hand it back to you one last time for you to say farewell.
Okay, well, thank you. I want to thank everybody as well for attending, and appreciate the time that you gave us today. Feel free to reach out to me. You can obviously go to the Neustar website if you have any interest as well. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I hope to see many of you at a forthcoming Momentum or Knowledge at Work customer centricity or retail related event at some point in the future. With that, we're going to wrap up today's webinar, and I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you very much and goodbye.